Thank you. So, retrospectives. Marcin already went through the definition today, what retrospective is, so I don't want to repeat myself. And also, I assume that you are here because you are actually interested in Agile and know something about it and maybe even experience it. But let's just have a quick check. Please raise your hand if you have participated in at least one retrospective in your life. Good, brilliant. Now, one more check. Raise your hand if you have ever facilitated retrospective. Amazing. I will be talking today about my pitfalls, about my failures. So I'm really curious if you have experienced the same mistakes or you maybe did your own. I hope that you will reach out to me and we can have some good laugh. But I have one last question. It's really mainly out of my curiosity. Since 2020, we've been working mostly remotely or in hybrid mode. So I'm wondering if fully on-site retrospectives still happen. So please raise your hand if, let's say, in the past 6 months, you took part in a fully on-site retrospective without anyone remotely. Not bad. Honestly, I was surprised. I was expecting like maybe 3 hands up, because for me it happened like maybe twice in this part. So I've been facilitating retrospectives since 2014. And during this time, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned, hopefully, even more. And today, I will share with you my mistakes, and I will also tell you how a KISS helped me. We'll get there, don't worry. If you find yourself confused, what is the connection between retros and the KISS, just bear with me. So all of you know what more or less retrospective is, or at least you've experienced it. But did you know that there are 5 stages for a successful retrospective? Well, you know if you were on Marcin's talk, because Marcin was talking about them. I've learned about them shortly after I became a Scrum Master. By the way, fun fact is that I first heard about them on Susie's talk. I think it was ACE conference in 2014 when you were talking about retrospectives. I was there and I've listened carefully. And when I've learned about them, thanks to Susie, and then experienced them myself, and I actually played around it with them, I realized 2 things. So first thing, structuring retrospectives this way is super powerful, and it really makes sense. Second thing I've learned is there are tons of exercises for each of the stages. Like, just to give you some colors of the numbers I'm talking about, only on Retromat, again, Marcin was talking about this site today, there are 30 exercises for setting the stage, 37, I'm trying to look at it, but I think my eyesight I don't see the numbers properly, 37 to gather data, 22 for generating insights and deciding what to do, and finally, 26 for closing the retrospective. Do you have an idea how many possibilities does it give you? A lot. That is true. But if you really want to know how many, don't worry, I did the math for you. It's almost 14 million different possibilities, retro agendas. A lot. I don't know how you feel about such abundance of possibilities. Are you scared? I see Marcin says no. Honestly, me neither. I wasn't scared. I was excited. I really felt like a kid in the candy store. I really wanted to try them all. And guess what? I've tried. It took me surprisingly long to realize that my lifespan won't be enough to try them all. But before I got there, and when I first actually became a Scrum Master, I will tell you a story how I became a Scrum Master, like very shortly. So before I was a Scrum Master, I was a software developer. And then the company went through the Agile transformation, and it was proposed to me that maybe I can step into Scrum Master shoes. So I was partially Scrum Masters and partially software development for the same team. So I already had a respect as a software developer with a few years experience. but I really wanted to gain the respect of the team as a Scrum Master. So I thought, like, what is the best place to get this respect? I thought, like, yes, I'm going to impress them with the retrospectives. So my strategy to impress the team with my retrospective was to impress them with my facilitation skills. And I figured that the best way to impress the team would be to impress them with each exercise with exercise for each of those stages that I previously covered. So do you know how long such a retro can take? If you really want to go with fireworks for each of the stages? 3 hours, perfectly. I see you know. I see you've been there. So I've realized that I'm doing something wrong when after fabulous Energizer and great check-in, the team was too tired to actually gather data and generate insights. Now I know that the best way to impress the team, especially during retrospective, is to actually help them identify the problem, find the solution, or if you don't have the solution, then just define an experiment within as shortest amount of time as possible. But before I learned that, I worked really hard to entertain the team all the time. So I was finding different exercises for each of the retrospective. I thought that the team needs to be entertained in order to actually find this meeting successful. And moreover, to make this entertainment even bigger, I was usually keeping those exercises hidden. It was a secret, like a surprise. And a lot of teams liked it. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of teams enjoyed the retrospectives. They even learned something there, and they even came with different and meaningful improvements. But guess what? Not everybody likes surprises. And this realization came to me in the form of feedback from a fellow QA I was working with at that time, and I will be forever grateful for this feedback. I remember after one of those fabulous retrospective, he told me over a cup of coffee, because that was the time when we were still working in the office. It was that many years ago. Aneta, why do you keep changing those questions, aka data gathering exercises? Always. I don't know how to prepare for the meeting if I don't know what to expect there. I was like, wow. Thank you for this feedback. Until that day, I always thought that coming up with different exercises is a challenge only for myself as a facilitator. I never thought that it can be a challenge also for a participant. But there is more to that. So some people were confused before the meeting how to prepare, but some of them were confused also during the meeting. So imagine that we are 30 minutes in the meeting. After checking, after data gathering, we started generating insights on the topic that the team decided is the most important thing. And then one developer speaks up and says, you know, I really don't want to disturb, but I have this meeting. I think it's really important. I really wanted to talk about it, but somehow it didn't feel like start category, stop category, continue category. I didn't know where to put it, so I just didn't put it anywhere. And guess what? It was the most important topic for the whole team. Somehow, no one else figured it out. So we've lost 30 minutes of the team's time. Like, you can take the average salary, developer salary, and calculate the cost. My frustration, high. Team's frustration, also high. But my frustration grew even higher when I realized that before that meeting, I actually spent 33 hours preparing this meeting for nothing. Because had I knew that this is the topic they want to discuss, that would be the main point of the retro. What I've learned two things. First of all, the teams really need to have a place to put the topics whenever they arise. I know that we are talking a lot of continuous improvement, but sometimes there are some problems that can actually wait. They are not urgent to discuss. We can wait for this retrospective time. It's just important that we don't forget about them because they are still important. And another thing I've learned it was that to actually ask people at the beginning of each retrospective, what is the most important topic you want to discuss? Are we going for all this format, or do you have something else you really want to take out of this retro? So they were confused before retro, they were confused during retro. It shouldn't come as a surprise that whenever I was not around, they really didn't know how to run it by themselves. In fact, retro was perceived as a super difficult and complicated event to facilitate. And shouldn't be a surprise, like, because honestly, I know it now. At that time, I failed the team to teach them how to do it in an efficient and easy way. But, so that's my failures. But I have to acknowledge two things, positive things. I've really mastered my facilitation skills. I did it. I know a lot of exercises. I know how people react, which people love, which people hate. So I'll be forever grateful to the teams that actually bear it with me. Second one is that some check-ins, some data gatherings, not to mention Energizer, they serve the purpose of team building really well. And especially since we started working remotely and in hybrid way, this is something that cannot be underestimated because you cannot count anymore on people bonding over the cup of coffee in the office. Team building, bonding, it has to be facilitated. So you may want to use the retrospective for that, especially in the beginning, to build the trust in the team. But what I advise, well, at least what I did, was that when I noticed that there's actually, it's not so much team building, but more socializing, I suggested, hey, maybe we just can have another call when we just do fun. We play games, we cheat, and we chit chat. So around 2 years ago, I did the effort and impact analysis of my work. So where I'm putting a lot of effort and is it yielding expected results? And it turned out that I'm spending around 6 hours each week on preparing retros, facilitating retros, summarizing retros, etc., around teams retrospectives. Is it a lot? Maybe yes, maybe not. That depends on your context. But I've also learned that and realized that I have some items on the horizon that I would want to work on because they are possibly very impactful, but I didn't have time. And that's when the KISS helps me. So KISS actually is an acronym for Keep It Simple Stupid. The acronym is reportedly coined by Johnson. And now I knew. I forgot his first name. It will come to me. But his surname was Johnson. He was a lead engineer in Skunkworks. Yes, I remember the name of the company. And the Skunkworks company is known, for example, for creating a Blackbird plane and many other planes as well. So imagine Johnson coming to a team of design engineers with a handful of tools. Nothing special about those tools. Like, average tools that average mechanic would have in his workshop. And he asked the team, the designers team, to design a jet aircraft. But this jet aircraft must have been repairable by an average mechanic using only these tools, nothing more. That's the definition of simple stupid. And there's a lot of parallel, at least I see a lot of parallel, maybe you will see it as well, between the story of this jet aircraft and the story of my retrospectives, because designing a jet aircraft is a complex task. And so is designing a successful inspection and adaptation process. Yet, for both of them to be repeatedly successful, they have to be maintained by simple tools. And I started looking at what I'm doing during retrospectives through the lens of simplicity. What is simple? What is overly complicated? What can be simplified? What can be reused? What can be automated, maybe even? And I've learned a lot. So first, what I've learned to actually simplify things was that the teams need a mirror. It's like when you hire a personal trainer. I hired once one. I really wanted him to teach me how to do proper exercise properly so that I don't hurt myself. So I remember when he was teaching me how to do squats properly. What he did, he put me in front of the mirror, and I was doing this squat, so I won't do it now. But whenever I was doing a mistake, he was pointing it in the mirror. What was the outcome? The outcome was that the next time I was doing it, he was not around. I was able to correct myself and to see how I'm doing. And so I started looking for this mirror for the team. And what works for the team? Data. And there are two types of data and how I'm using it. So first is like a full body mirror, something that gives you like a image of everything about you, about the team. Where are you? What am I talking about? And the health checks and maturity assessments. I do it with the teams, let's say every 6 months, depending on the team, 3 to 6 months. What it gives me, and the team, of course, a direction. What are the main focus points for this team's development? Examples? Some team may decide that they want to improve predictability. Other teams may decide that they want to create a feedback culture. Honestly, I don't think that creating feedback culture would come out without the assessment. So we do this full body scan, but not so often because, it takes time. And then we need the smaller mirrors, more focused. So, for example, for the team that decided to improve their feedback culture, maybe the first step would be to start with appreciation. So maybe we will be asking ourselves during each retrospectives, how are we doing with appreciations? Who have we appreciated? How many of other team members have we appreciated in the past 2 weeks? But there are other metrics that serves really well that are not team specific. And what I will show you now, well, this is basically flow metrics. So this is not rocket science. There is a lot of materials about flow metrics, so I won't be going into the details what it is and how to construct them, but I will tell you how I'm using it and give you some examples of what the teams learned. So first thing that it really is an eye-opening for the team that I've noticed is that when we actually start looking at the time, how long does it take for the team to complete an item? And I remember the team discovering that they have maybe not majority, but a lot of items needed around 60 days to complete. We are talking here about task level. It's a lot. And they discovered that in their quest for having as small tasks as possible, they have forgotten that each task has to be testable. So the items were waiting to be tested properly. Another thing, work item age. So take things that are in progress currently and see how long have they been in progress. And what I remember here having the item that was in progress for 20 days. And when we started asking ourselves, okay, how can we speed things up? How can we even move it forward? Because that's the thing. It was for 20 days and it was nowhere near finished. What we learned that it has to stay there. There is no one to take over because person who was working on it has to fix some very urgent bug and work on that high priority item. And there was no one with the competences to take it over. So actually looking at the work item age revealed a silo that we had in the team. So you see, instead of going through more data gathering during the retro, we actually focused on how do we break down the silo, because this is the impediment for the team. How many things do you have currently running? So this is the item when we think about how many things the team can work comfortably on, but also how many things on you personally can work on. But it's also important to think about it not only on a story level, but also on an epic level. And honestly, that's the biggest game changer, is when you start thinking about how many things the team can work on comfortably on these bigger functionalities. Because even if the team is limiting and managing, like you don't have to limit, but manage work in progress. And let's say we have a team of 7 developers working on eight items in total. Seems manageable. But if they come from 5 different functionalities, then every time there is a code review, someone has to actually dig a lot deep into. QAs have to get familiar with 5 functionalities at one time. It is insane, not to mention that the business is waiting for ages for the value to be delivered. Another thing that really comes up when you start talking about and they introduce the concepts, the context switching, and that I've learned was that the first question we get is, okay, but what do I do, for example, if I'm waiting for a code review for someone, or for a QA, or for anyone? And one of the suggestion was, I'm just citing, maybe paraphrasing the conversation that we had was, well, you can, for example, do a code review, maybe for your teammate, maybe for other team. And then we're like, okay, but I don't feel comfortable doing code reviews for other teams. I don't have that experience. Okay, what can we do to help you gain this experience? And guess what? The team decided to spend at least a week, every week, an hour every week on doing mob code review. They pick interesting PRs. It doesn't have to be from their domain. It can be from any teams, and they do code review together. And basically, seniors are teaching juniors a lot and passing the knowledge. Finally, throughput. How many things are you getting over the line within a unit of time? I remember one team that I brought this metric to, and honestly, they feel relieved when they learn that they are completing only 3 or 4 items a week. Why? Because the team was struggling with refining work. They felt pressure to refine as much work as possible after each refinement. And when we had a look at throughput, they learned that, okay, it's enough for us to refine 3 to 4 items a week to have a stable flow of work. So that way, they could actually focus more on quality than on quantity. So, putting it all together, that's my key retrospective now, how I'm doing it. So we start each retrospective by reviewing ongoing action items. That's also something that in the beginning I was really underestimating the time required for it and the effort that is needed there. So we take the ongoing actions. We ask ourselves, is it bringing the results we were expecting? Do we need to change our course of actions? Is it still relevant? Come on, within the 2 weeks, many things could have changed. Maybe it's still not valid. You know this, do you remember this agile principle, maximizing work not done? I really love it, and this is also about it. Then we review metrics. The metrics that comes from the long-term goal, the flow metrics. Then we go into link coffee discussion. What can fit into link coffee discussion? Topics that we uncover during reviewing metrics, but also anything that the team raised beforehand. Because the board is always there. It's always open. So whenever the team feels like there is something important they would like to discuss during retrospective, they can just put it there. And finally, we summarize ongoing and new action items. Is it the final state of my KEYS retrospective? I don't think so. Is there a room for improvement? Definitely so. But so far, it's proving to be good enough. And I've been running retrospectives this way with all my teams since October 2022. And that's what I've learned. First of all, teams learn really a lot from flow metrics. If you make an effort to teach the team properly about the team metrics, if they understand that this is a tool for improvement and not for the judgment, if management around the team knows it as well, then this is a really powerful tool. Next, topics for discussion. We usually know what we will be discussing during the retros because the topics are there. Honestly, I do not have to have my notes with what I want to do with the team anymore because I'm also putting it there. For example, I want to run an roles and responsibilities exercise with the team. It's there as a topic to discuss. Team knows it, team expects it, we know what we're doing. How long do I prep for the retro? Nothing, almost zero. I just have a look at what's on the board if there is anything I need to actually prep for. But usually it's really 5 minutes at top. Teams are still engaged in the retrospectives. They really love it. Finally, the teams are really doing the retrospectives when I'm not around, and they are coming up with the beautiful and meaningful experiments. And the last but not least, they really like it. They appreciate that we are jumping straight to the point, that we are not wasting our time. So that's my journey. And we could leave it at this here, like as my funny story of my pitfalls and how a keys helps me. But what I invite you to do is to do your own effort and impact matrix. Because thanks to this exercise, I discovered that retrospective is a room that I have a room for improvement in retrospectives, but maybe you will discover something else. And I want you to live with this question. What can you simplify to make your life easier? I'm really curious what you will come up with, so don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find me, for example, on LinkedIn. And I will leave you here just with this question. Thank you.